there's quite a number of different answers, and it all depends on the business. We've done analysis for certain customers where we've been like, brilliant, we've got TCO parity. It actually works out way better. At the moment, we've got a disproportionate, a slight advantage to the electric vehicle because fuel prices are so high. The actual diesel, especially when you're looking at the diesel models. So diesel is so expensive as a litre. But then, and if you can get a really good cost-effective home charging tariff, then the TCO modelling stacks up exceptionally well. But obviously, we know that we're seeing 28 pence per kilowatt becoming the norm at home, which is likely to jump up again. So that changes the TCO modelling in a completely different way. And that's based on, so that can work really, really well at 100% charging at home. But it's also, but if you then suddenly start moving towards 100% charging on the network, then it's a completely different TCO model. I think we've got a slide for this one, haven't we? Just to kind of demonstrate. On the far left, obviously we've got Persona A, which is based on 100% charging at home, and this is the pence per mile cost. Okay, and this is based on I think it's 2.4, which is the average miles per kilowatt, 2.4 miles per kilowatt, which is the average electric van figure at the moment, and I think around 45 miles per gallon as well. So just gives you an idea. So obviously charging at home on a decent rate, you're going to get a pretty good pence per mile. But the further you go across, the more the mix starts to come in, and you're looking, Persona G is 100% network. And at that point, 22 pence per mile is actually above the diesel and petrol pence per mile rates as well, the average that we tend to see there. So, you've still got a decent mix. If you've got workplace in the middle, Persona D, you've got 50% at home, 25% at workplace, and 25% at network. You tend to see about, it's still going to work out quite well. But again, the challenge that you've got with TCO modeling on electric is that the fuel cost can be so different. You can potentially get free electric in certain areas, and you can go right the way through to 70, 80 pence per kilowatt hour, depending on your charging speed and wherever else. So that has a massive bearing on the TCO modeling. So to answer the question in a bit of a fluffy way, we can do if the vehicle is operating or being charged or it is in the right conditions. If it's not, and if you say got a driver that is not going to be able to charge at home, there's absolutely no way of getting workplace charging, it might be a little bit more of a challenge to get TCO parity. You might have, so we'll break it down. You have small, medium, and large. They're going to have different charging models, different charging requirements. And then you've also got different drivers. So they might be in the same vehicle, but they're operating differently on a day-to-day basis. So their persona is slightly different. So they need a different TCO model. So this is where one thing that it's relatively simple. You can calculate the TCO figures with everything except for fuel. And then you almost need to model the fuel side away from the total TCO. So what you do is you take the TCO figures, what's the cost, what's the total TCO or total allocated cost for the fuel, you remove that, and then you have it as a variable. And then each one you just model, you say, right, this is the base TCO with everything else. And then we just change the fuel side of it. So then you can really start to match that against internal combustion engine vehicles as well. But yeah, it is, you do need to be, that's kind of what we were saying, you need to be a bit more granular. We're talking about transition here. So this is where we have a bit more of a challenge, because we're talking about comparing internal combustion engine vehicles to electric. But in the future, and once you start to transition, once you've made that move and you've switched your fleet, then you're comparing like for like, and that we don't have the same kind of headache, because you're going to be talking about similar powertrains. But at the moment, it is a challenge because you're talking about switching, and there are obviously very different models that come with that as well. At the moment, I don't need to use the public charging network as much. That's great. But in this winter, my range dropped off a cliff. So yeah, I was definitely using it. So you are going to have these different personas. You could potentially, you would take these 7 personas and times it by 2 and model a worst case winter range, and potentially a worst case with payload as well. So you're talking winter and payload, which obviously both have quite a significant effect on the range. Or you might end up looking at saying, well, actually that driver is going to be more dependent on, well, is going to have a higher payload. So as a result, that's going to change their charging model because it's going to have a bigger impact on their range, and that's something that needs to be considered as part of this personas as well. So yeah, you're right. This could be done on multiple different levels and as granular as you want to, really, and just modeling out loads of different scenarios. It's definitely something that is worthwhile doing almost separately from the rest of the TCO figures.